It was the coldest night in years. The temperature had dropped to a deadly -45 degrees Celsius, freezing everything in sight. The trees stood motionless, their branches weighed down by thick layers of ice. The wind howled through the wilderness, sending waves of snow crashing against the windows of a lonely wooden cabin. Inside, Michael Carter, a wildlife photographer, sat by the fire, wrapped in a heavy blanket. The flickering flames cast long shadows across the room as he sipped his coffee, staring at the storm outside. He had come here to document the harsh beauty of the Arctic wilderness, but now, all he wanted was to survive the brutal night. Then, it happened. A faint scratching sound came from the door. Michael froze. His heart pounded. Was it the wind? An animal? A person? The scratching turned into a weak thump. Something, or someone, was out there. Slowly, cautiously, Michael approached the door. He hesitated for a moment, then grabbed his flashlight, took a deep breath, and pulled it open. What he saw made his blood run cold. A huge brown bear stood before him, its massive body covered in frost, its fur stiff from the ice. But what terrified Michael the most were its eyes. They weren't filled with aggression. They weren't wild with hunger. They were filled with fear, with desperation, with pain. The bear let out a low, trembling whimper. It swayed on its feet, its legs barely able to hold its weight. And then, it collapsed. A choice that changed everything. Michael stumbled backward. Every instinct screamed at him to shut the door, to run, to protect himself. But he didn't. Something about the bear's pleading eyes held him in place. This wasn't an attack. This wasn't a predator hunting its prey. This was an animal begging for help. That's when he saw it. A tiny bear cub peeking out from behind its mother, its small body shaking violently from the cold. Michael's breath caught in his throat. This bear wasn't just trying to save itself. It was trying to save its baby. Torn between fear and compassion, Michael made a decision that defied every survival instinct he had. He stepped aside and let them in. The fight for survival. The mother bear staggered into the cabin, her massive body almost collapsing onto the wooden floor. The cub clung to her, pressing itself into her frozen fur. Michael moved quickly. Heat, shelter, food. He grabbed an old blanket and, with shaking hands, carefully draped it over the mother bear's back. She flinched but didn't resist. Her breathing was shallow, labored. He rushed to his storage, grabbing whatever food he had. A few pieces of fresh fish. He placed them near the bear's mouth, then stepped back. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the bear opened its mouth and took a bite. Michael felt a wave of relief crash over him. She was still fighting. The cub, seeing its mother eat, finally crawled forward and nibbled on the fish as well. A spark of hope flickered in the room. But outside, the storm raged on. The night was far from over. The longest night. Hours passed. The blizzard outside grew fiercer, shaking the cabin's walls. The temperature dropped even further. Michael stayed awake, watching over his unexpected guests. The mother bear slowly regained some strength, her shivering less violent now. The cub curled against her, its tiny chest rising and falling in steady breaths. Michael couldn't believe what was happening. A few hours ago, he had been alone. Now, he was sharing his home with two wild bears. As exhaustion finally took hold, he leaned against the wall, his eyes heavy with sleep. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was the mother bear's soft, grateful gaze. A new dawn. Morning came with an eerie silence. Michael jerked awake. The fire had burned low, casting a soft, golden glow around the room. He turned toward the bears, and what he saw made his breath catch. The mother bear was standing. She looked stronger. Still weak, but no longer on the brink of collapse. The cub clung to her side, its tiny eyes brighter than before. For a long moment, Michael and the bear just stared at each other. Then, slowly, the bear took a step forward. Michael tensed. Was she going to attack? But she didn't. Instead, she nuzzled his hand. Michael's eyes widened. A thank you. A silent, powerful thank you. Then, as if knowing it was time, the mother bear turned toward the door. She looked at Michael one last time, a gaze filled with understanding, with trust. And then, she left. The cub hesitated, looking back at the man who had saved them. And then, with a small grunt, it followed its mother into the snowy wilderness. Michael stood in the doorway, watching them disappear into the white horizon. His heart pounded, his breath caught in his chest. He had just witnessed something incredible. A bond formed in the most unlikely of moments. A story no one would ever believe, but one he would never forget. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, All Rescuers, for more incredible rescue stories like this. See you in the next video.